Listening Fanfiction presents. If you liked it, then you should have put 10 rings on it. By Lot, based off the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Narrated for you by Sierra Feast.
You know what?
Says Erik.
I'd fuck your dad in a heartbeat.
Dude! Hisses Shangqi. You can't just say shit like that!
Like what?
Erik spreads his hands at least as far as the binders will let him.
You got a problem with what I like?
I got a problem that it's my dad! Shang-Chi shudders. Ugh! I so regret sending you both to the same supervillain prison! Actually, Shang-Chi had not had a whole lot of options. Ta Lo wouldn't keep his father long term. And there wasn't a prison in Asia that could hold Zhu Wenwu, who had at some point had dealings with all of them. Several of Shang-Chi's new co-workers had given The Raft bad reviews, so that was out. During submission downtime, he'd mentioned his dilemma to Captain America, who'd mentioned it to the Winter Soldier, who'd suggested Wakanda. It was when Shang-Chi was viewing the premises and inquiring about security levels. Really, it was like shopping for retirement homes for your parents, but so much worse because there weren't brochures or anything, that he discovered his father's future fellow inmates included the villain formerly known as Killmonger. "Hey," said Shang-Chi, "I know that guy."
"You know my cousin,"
said T'Challa, nonplussed. "Yeah," said Shang-Chi. "We were college roommates." "Ah," said T'Challa thoughtfully. It was clear the idea of a youthful Erik with academic pursuits was a mystery he was dying to plumb. "Please, tell me more." The upshot of this was that when Shang-Chi visited his father in prison, which he tried to do on a monthly basis if Wong felt up to giving him a lift, he wound up visiting Erik too. It was good for him, T'Challa said. Erik didn't have many friends, at least not ones he hadn't already murdered. "When did you even get to meet my dad?" Shang-Chi demands. "Surely they don't let you guys mix."
"Mahjong night,"
said Erik, deadpan. "The hell?"
"It was your dad's idea. T'Challa went for it because he's got all these high-minded ideas about social rehabilitation. He even let Zemo join. Zemo cheats all the time, but at least it keeps things interesting. Prison boring."
"Huh." Shang-Chi considers this. "Who makes up the table?"
"Okoye, supposed to have Adora keep an eye on us while we're mingling. Somehow she volunteered. She got pretty damn good at it too. Been cleaning us out of commissary."
Erik leans over the table and grins.
"I'm a forearms kind of guy, you know, and when your dad washes the tiles..."
He lets out a low whistle.
"Man can get it."
Shang-Chi sighs. Erik has been this way as long as he's known him. Never had a conversation he didn't want to put on edge. Always liked to draw blood. "Don't hit on my dad."
"Why? 'Cause he's straight? Man's 1,000 years old. He's gotta have played the field on both sides at some point."
"Because he's still really hung up on my mom?" Shang-Chi shoots back. "And also you're in supervillain prison! Damn it, if there was anywhere to keep it in your pants, this would be the place." Erik shrugs.
"What can I say? Doing time is thirsty work."
"You," Shang-Chi tells him, "are the actual worst."
"Says you, my cousin, and all the righteous folk of Wakanda. Get in line."
Erik and Shang-Chi had wound up as roommates by last-minute assignment. Shang-Chi had lobbied hard to get his own room. He had even written to college accommodation to allude to mental health issues, which he had been astonished to learn was an actual thing in America. But being a fake orphan on a scholarship he'd lied his way into, it was not like he could have protested when 1.5 weeks into freshman orientation, his door banged open and in walked this tall guy with dreads pulled back and a predatory expression, like college was a pool of seals that didn't yet know it was Shark Week. There was a thick silver ring hanging on a chain around his neck.
"Hey, roomie," he said. "What's good?"
Shang-Chi made a non-committal noise. His new roommate did a circuit of the space, then dropped his gym bag, which seemed the sum total of his worldly possessions, on his bed.
"At least they didn't give me another white trust fund, kid,"
he said, and then flopped onto the bed, shoes and all, a disgusting American habit Shang-Chi had yet to get used to, and was out like a light.
Weeks went by before they said anything to one another outside of grunts of acknowledgement. Shang-Chi learnt on the grapevine that Erik Stevens had gone through 2 other roommates before him, and that both had requested transfers because of Eric's unmitigated assholery or something. Shang-Chi saw little evidence of this in his own interactions. Erik was rarely in, and largely ignored him when he was. Erik already had a reputation on campus. Troubled background, people whispered. He's from Oakland, you know. You can tell he's seen some crap. Shang-Chi worried all the time if people could tell that he, too, had seen some crap. His own brand. Shang-Chi, easygoing, good for shooting some hoops or going clubbing after class, revolved around not being perceived as such. When people asked him, "No, but where are you really from?" he just laughed and changed the subject. Nobody, absolutely nobody, could know where he was really from. Then the dreams started again. The dreams were the reason Shang-Chi had requested his own room. The one he had most often was the one of his mother, of watching helplessly through the window as the circle of men closed in on her. That night, however, it was the dream of the man he had come to America to kill. The way the man wept, begged, invoked the names of his children, the way the sobs gave way to the bubbling of blood and the crunch of bone, as Shang-Chi watched his fist drive into the man's face over and over and over. In the end, he hadn't needed the knife at all. He woke in the dark yelling because of the pain in his knuckles. He punched clean through the wall next to his bed, wrist deep in plasterboard. He prayed Erik had slept through it, but when he turned his head, he saw his roommate rearing half off the bed, poised to strike. The moonlight glinted on something in his hand. Shang-Chi realized it was a knife. They did not speak for several seconds, breathing hard. Then Erik made the knife disappear somewhere on his person, and Shang-Chi withdrew his fist from the wall, ignoring the bloody mess it was going to make on his sheets. Erik sank back down onto his bed, the moonlight catching the ring he always wore around his neck. He never took it off. Shang-Chi had the feeling it carried the same weight as his own green pendant. Eventually, Erik turned on his side without a word and, to all appearances, went back to sleep. Shang-Chi knew, even without asking, that neither would speak of this in the morning. "I hate to break it to you," says Katie as they're queuing for bubble tea, "but your dad is a DILF." Shang-Chi groans. "Not you too." "I don't mean that I would action that, personally." Katie goes on blithely. "In my case, I think the sheer terror outweighs any attraction, but hey, some people go for that sort of thing." Shang-Chi shudders and changes the topic. "How's the arrowing going?" Katie spent the summer apprenticed to the greatest archer in the world. Really, this meant that she spent a lot of time on Clint Martin's farm babysitting his kids, or hanging out on the rooftops of really tall buildings, watching epic animal fail videos on YouTube and not actually shooting a whole lot. Katie's chief annoyance these days is how often people confuse her for Clint's other apprentice, just because she's also kind of Asian. It's not even the same kind of Asian. The other Avengers have taken to differentiating them as Katie B and Katie C. "My mom saw me on TV the other day," says Katie. "Was that the interdimensional demons?" "No, you're thinking of last month. I meant the Siberian wall crawlers." "Oh yeah, I saw those. Nasty." "Right? And then I get home all covered with goo and she's like, 'Katie, you were on TV.' And I'm like, 'Great, Mom, what'd you think?' And she's like, 'You missed the shot on live TV. It was so embarrassing for our family.' And then obviously Katie B hit all her targets like the show-off she is. My mom is probably calling Clint right now to complain. I gotta move out, man. 2 brown sugar milk teas with pearls," she adds to the cashier. "Less sugar for him." As far as Shang-Chi is concerned, the most heinous thing Katie's mother has ever done is forwarding those "Good morning, Jesus loves you" images on WhatsApp. It's nice that other people get to have normal parents. "So how's Erik?" asks Katie as they stand around ready to collect their drinks. "Besides thirsting after your dad, that is." "He's okay, I guess," says Shang-Chi. "He's in prison, so obviously he's not great." "It's so weird," says Katie. "It's like, oh my god, they were roommates, but the darkest timeline." "It is weird," agrees Shang-Chi. "Not the weirdest thing that's ever happened to us, but a bit weird."
It's funny because I always thought he was kind of a dork. Like, sure, he was ripped and everything, but whenever I went over to hang with you, he was always reading, like, really deep stuff. And he'd be like, Katie, I'm gonna educate you about post-colonial theory. She punches Shang-Chi lightly in the bicep. I still can't believe you told him about you before you told me.
Well, says Shang-Chi, it's just different. They would probably never have talked about that night if Shang-Chi hadn't gone and got mugged. One moment he was wandering a poorly lit street absorbed in scrolling through Twitter. The next he was being held up by some arseholes with a card knife demanding his wallet. Shang-Chi was so taken aback that he actually just handed it over. There was nothing in it anyway except $5 and his student ID. But then the muggers laughed and shoved him hard so that he went sprawling on the sidewalk. They said a word then. He couldn't hear it clearly, but it rhymed with think, and he felt white-hot rage surge through him, felt his hand curl into a fist, and he grit his teeth and tamped it down, made himself lie still in the dirt unnoticed by the world. Up ahead, the laughter of the muggers was abruptly cut off. Their attacker moved fast. Shang-Chi heard his blows fall hard and sharp, a tooth broken, a finger snapped. Then Erik was standing over him, hand outstretched. Shang-Chi let him pull him to his feet.
Here.
Erik tossed him his wallet. He was wearing his glasses and carrying a library copy of The Wretched of the Earth, which he hadn't even dropped in the fight.
I'm headed back to the halls. You coming?
Thanks, said Shang-Chi. Erik shrugged. They walked a few streets in silence. Then Erik said,
Why didn't you fight them?
Shang-Chi began to make some vague excuse about how he didn't know how to fight, but Erik cut him off.
This some bullshit. I've seen you. You could have taken them easy.
He fixed Shang-Chi with a look.
Who are you, for real?
Shang-Chi wasn't prepared to answer that question. Not in a dark street on the way back to campus. Not ever. He never told anyone, not even Katie, the person he loved most in America. Katie took her laundry home to her mother on weekends, and they would nag and snipe at each other all night, but in the morning she would always get yu-tai-o and pickles with her porridge. She would never understand the things Shang-Chi knew, what it was like to live on the streets at 14, or to feel a man's neck snap between your hands. He had a feeling, though, that Erik knew.
Not gonna bite? Okay. Ever heard of Wakanda?
Shang-Chi had heard about Wakanda, though what he knew about it couldn't fill a contact lens.
It's in Africa? That's where you're from? Where my dad's from.
A shadow passed over Erik's face.
Was from. You see, my father was the brother of the king of Wakanda.
Hang on, said Shang-Chi. You're the prince of a small African nation?
Oh, it ain't small.
Erik laughed darkly.
My father was sent to America on a mission. He met my mom here, fell in love, and had me. There she died. One day some folks came from Wakanda. Came and left in their fancy-ass ship. And next thing I know, my daddy's dead.
I'm sorry, was all Shang-Chi could think of to say. Erik exhaled.
Okay, your turn.
It's hard to believe, Shang-Chi began.
Yeah? Try me.
Shang-Chi took a deep breath. My father is an immortal warlord with his own international terrorist organization, and I ran away from him when I was 14 because I didn't want to be a child assassin. He glanced over at Erik, waiting for him to laugh or scoff. But all Erik said, thoughtfully, was,
Yeah, that tracks.
Shang-Chi blinked.
My real name is Njadaka, said Erik. What's yours?
Shang-Chi knew he shouldn't, but he told him. It was such a relief to tell someone, to let the words pass over his tongue for the first time in 5 years. Erik mangled the pronunciation at first, but he made Shang-Chi repeat it over and over, and by the 7th try, he had nailed it.
Don't hide who you are, brother,
he said. Shang-Chi shook his head. I can't let him find me. You don't know what he's like.
I'd kill to let my dad find me again.
Erik said it simply, without exaggeration, like he meant it literally.
But, okay. I got one condition, though.
He grinned then, his teeth white in the near dark.
I want you to fight me.
So, says his father, are you head of the Avengers yet?
Shang-Chi is always concerned that his father isn't taking prison seriously. He's super chill about it, like he's on some kind of retreat. According to the Dora Milaje who guard him, he spends most of his time either meditating or reading. He's devoured the three-body problem in Chinese, and has since requested the English edition so he can critique Ken Liu's translation. If you didn't know any better, you'd think going to prison was his idea. Like he's just some guy working through his midlife crisis, taking a sabbatical from the daily grind of global terrorism to find himself. "I'm not head of the Avengers," says Shang-Chi through gritted teeth. "I'm the new guy. Basically the intern. Wait, no, that's Spider-Man. I'm even newer than the intern."
You should work your way up to leadership soon. You are clearly the most powerful of them all.
Pretty sure that's Captain Marvel?
Is she head of the Avengers?
Carol Danvers would probably be head of the Avengers if she were ever in the same galaxy for longer than half a crisis. Shang-Chi doesn't even think there is a head of the Avengers anymore. They were a random bunch of superheroes held together by the common experience of having saved the world, the vague conviction they should do it again, and Wong's willingness to bend the rules of space and time to occasionally get them into the same meetings. "We've got this thing called lateral organization structure," he says in English. "Not that you know anything about that." His father sighs.
So long as it is not Captain America again. American exceptionalism is a myth that you would do well not to perpetuate.
"Yikes, Dad! Okay," drawls Shang-Chi in his best Californian twang because he relishes seeing the muscle twitch under his father's left eye.
How is your sister?
Jia Ling was supposed to dismantle the Ten Rings, but the lure of her business acumen proved too strong. She is, by her account, now transforming it into a logistics and e-commerce empire. "Gone full girl boss," as Katie put it, like Jack Ma, but with legit kung fu. She hasn't visited their father in prison, though apparently she regularly sends him news clippings about her and the company, none of which he bothers to read.
She's good,
says Shang-Chi simply.
Is she not coming to Banyan?
You basically ignored her for most of her life, and now you're sore she's not paying you attention?
At least she has a decent income,
says his father.
How much does avenging pay you again?
I really should have killed you in Talo, says Shang-Chi with feeling. Is all his father says. Very little ruffles the deceptively implacable surface of Zhu Wenwu, but any mention of Talo seems to effectively embarrass him. Having mistaken a giant soul-sucking monster for your dead wife is not a good look. Shang-Chi vindictively brings it up as much as possible. Okoye intercepts him as he is leaving the prison. "This is for you," she says peremptorily, handing him a red envelope. Shang-Chi opens. It contains $888 in crisp U.S. currency.
"What is this?"
"From your father," says Okoye. "His Mahjong winnings for the past few months. He asked me to help convert it for you."
"Thanks,"
says Shang-Chi. "Any chance you'll let me back up there so I can throw it in his face?" Okoye clasps him briskly on the shoulder before starting off. "Happy Lunar New Year."
"Hit me,"
said Erik.
"I mean, really hit me."
Shang-Chi flexed a fist doubtfully.
"You sure about that?"
"Yeah." Erik rolled his shoulders.
"Come on."
"Your funeral." Shang-Chi let the power surge into his fist. The blow sent Erik flying clean across the concrete. Shang-Chi had a moment of brief terror in which he thought he'd killed him, but then Erik flipped back onto his feet, wiped a smear of blood from the corner of his mouth, and laughed. "Now that's what I'm talking about!" Shang-Chi didn't love training. He always felt his father's eyes on him, even now in America. But there was something wildly liberating about sparring with Erik. They fought at underground gyms, deserted rooftops, and parking lots, places that Erik found for them, away from the eyes of anyone who might know them on campus. Erik fought hard and nasty. He wasn't as good as Shang-Chi, but there was a reckless flair to his moves that made him hard to predict. He landed blows that left the whole of Shang-Chi's right flank feeling like one massive bruise. Shang-Chi felt more alive than he had in years. Afterwards, they sat on the dusty concrete splitting a beer.
"You ever kill anyone?"
said Erik out of the blue. Shang-Chi didn't answer. Erik regarded him in his silence and said,
Huh.
He took a swig from the can and handed it over.
What's it like?
Nothing I ever want to do again, said Shang-Chi low and hard.
I'm going to kill the man who murdered my father.
Eric's hand had gone to the ring around his neck, twisting it on its chain.
I'm going to get back into Wakanda, and I'm going to find him, and I'm going to kill him.
It doesn't help, said Shang-Chi. His own hand had risen of its own accord to touch his mother's pendant. Believe me.
But what am I going to do?
Erik whispered fiercely.
What else am I going to do?
Live your own life, said Shang-Chi.
I guess. Yeah? How's that working out for you?
Shang-Chi finished the beer, crumpled the can like paper, and hurled it across the room. Shang-Chi had just wrapped up a visit with his father and is headed to the labs to meet Shuri. Part of the deal is that she gets to play with the rings whenever he's over, and it is kind of fun to sit in and listen to her technobabble when he hears raised voices down the corridor. A small bevy of Dora Milaje race towards the source of the noise, coming to a confused halt as T'Challa emerges, raising a hand to call them off. He spots Shang-Chi and gives him a weary nod. Just talking to my cousin, he says ruefully. He talked back. T'Challa's eyes. Sometimes I wonder if there is nothing in him but anger. I tell myself that I have forgiven him for all he has done, but on days like this, that is sorely tested. I'll just drop in to say hi. Please, T'Challa inclines his head, though I cannot vouch for his mood today. Erik is pacing the meeting room. He is alone, but Shang-Chi knows from his time here that the Dora are always watching somewhere. There are no dents in any of the furniture, but Erik's knuckles are split and leaking blood, some of which he has dragged over the two white walls. You okay? Shang-Chi ventures. Erik spares him a glance.
My cousin sent you in to play good cop.
I'm here of my own accord, says Shang-Chi. He perches on the edge of the table, which, like the rest of the furniture, is bolted down. He's really trying, you know. He takes the things you say into consideration. He's already made so many policy changes. Opening up Wakanda, international outreach.
So he just keeps me around for my counsel.
Spits Erik.
Like some kind of devil's advocate you gotta keep chained up in the basement.
It's not like that.
He should have killed me. I should have died. Anything but a lifetime of this.
I don't think he means to keep you here forever.
Why wouldn't he? Would you let your father out?
In Shang-Chi's silence, Erik sneers and turns away.
He knows as well as I do that the moment he lets me out of here, I'm gonna burn it all to the ground again. That's what I do.
It doesn't have to be that way.
Nah, says Erik. Nah, you don't get to come in here and act like you know me. Look what you got on your wrists. Look what I got on mine.
Shang-Chi sighs and gets up to leave.
Yeah, you walk away,
Erik calls after him.
like you walked away from your father.
Shang-Chi stops. You don't know the first thing about me and my father.
He offered you a place to decide, and you give it up to play hero for folks who ain't ever counting you as one of their own.
Snarls Erik.
You know what I'd give to be on my father's side again? Everything. I'd raise the whole fucking world.
Shang-Chi slams the door behind him. Eric's muffled shouting follows him down the corridor.
Yeah, fuck up back to Frisco, Sean.
After Erik finished post-grad, they lost touch. The last Shang-Chi heard from him, he was in the military, and then it seemed like he just dropped off the face of the earth. Shang-Chi knew better than to probe. Sometimes people just needed to disappear. It was years later, when he had landed the valet parking gig with Katie, that a sleek Maybach pulled into the hotel driveway. Shang-Chi went automatically to open the door for the driver and stopped, stunned. Erik looked good. He was wearing a suit jacket and jeans, and his open shirt gaped over row upon row of raised scars, round bumps lining his skin, neat and terrible.
Shang-Chi, my man,
he said. He hadn't forgotten how to pronounce it. Erik, said Shang-Chi at a loss. It's good to see you. Do you need that valet parked?
I'm going home, said Erik without preamble. I found the way. I could use you on my side.
Shang-Chi looked around at the line of irate drivers behind Erik, at Katie at the valet stand mouthing, "What the heck?" at the tiny universe he had built to lock himself in. "I can't," he said.
What?
Said Erik, too casual.
You can't leave this? Too busy parking cars for rich folks and sticking your head in the dirt? There's a change coming. You feel it?
"Look," said Shang-Chi, "it's good to see you, it really is, but I can't go with you. I just can't." Erik nodded slowly, something in his face shuddering.
I see.
"I hope you make it home," said Shang-Chi to nobody as the Maybach peeled out of the driveway. He thought that was the last time he would see Erik, but it wasn't. Years later, he would slide into the chair across from the man who'd been his friend, briefed on what had gone down in Wakanda, how many had died, how Erik had found the homeland he'd always dreamed of, and brought it to its knees. "Hey, man," he would say. Erik would look drawn, circles under his eyes, chest wounds still healing, and him showing no inclination to hurry it along. But there would be the same fierceness to his gaze, and he would rake it along the rings lining Shang-Chi's arms and laugh, hollow.
Guess one of us made it at least.
Shang-Chi is going to kill a man. He is pounding his face into the dirt, blood and bone, over and over and over, and he drags him up by the hair to deliver the final blow. And it's his father's face.
Shang-Chi.
Somebody is screaming. It could be his mother. She's standing behind him, but he can't turn to look at her. He can never look her in the face again after this. It could be him.
Shang-Chi.
Searing lights, a seismic pain in his head like it might erupt any second. Shang-Chi sucks in air, disoriented and spluttering. What's happening?
"Son, you were kidnapped by aliens," says his father. "I really expected better."
Shang-Chi gapes blearily up at him. He registers vaguely that he's been shackled in some kind of foreign metal and strung up in the middle of a strange laboratory which is filling up with white smoke. His father sighs and straps a gas mask onto him. He is, Shang-Chi observes through a nauseated haze, wearing what looks like a very high-tech diving suit, helmet and all. "Is this another hallucination?" he mumbles into the mask, and then as a memory drifts close enough for him to grab it, "Katie! Oh my god, where's Katie?" "I got her." And there, and probably, is Erik, also in one of those suits, with an unconscious Katie slung over his shoulder.
"She just passed out. They weren't doing anything with her."
His father taps the shackles encasing Shang-Chi's arms and clears his throat irritably. "Right," says Shang-Chi and musters up enough energy to activate a couple of the rings and blast himself free.
"Can you walk?"
says his father. Then he marches off before Shang-Chi has even tested his weight long enough to scrounge up an answer. "What's going on?" wheezes Shang-Chi, limping after him into a weird red corridor full of more white gas and the bodies of... Are those Skalina aliens? What the hell? Why aren't you guys in prison?
"Because we're rescuing your asses, why?"
says Erik.
"Keep up, Sleeping Beauty."
There's an explosion further up the corridor, and the Winter Soldier charges out of the fog, waving a ridiculously large rifle and shouting through his helmet.
"Back to the ship! Back to the ship!"
"Sergeant Barnes!" hisses Shang-Chi, trying woozily to keep up. "I don't know if you know, but my dad's not supposed to be out of prison. We gotta put him back."
"He has no respect for his elders,"
his father tells the Winter Soldier, like he expects him to commiserate just because Barnes is closest to him in age.
"It's a long story,"
says Barnes.
"I'll explain on the way back to Earth."
Back to... Shang-Chi catches a glimpse through a porthole of black void, a sprinkling of stars. "Holy crap, we're in space!"
Yeah, space, we're all over it."
Erik adjusts his grip on Katie and reaches out to drag Shang-Chi along.
"Come on!"
"How?" begins Shang-Chi, but is distracted by an alien squid dropping out of the ceiling and throwing his father against the wall. His father doesn't have the rings. His father isn't even armed. "Bah!" screams Shang-Chi, and without thinking, flings a hand out. 5 of the rings flow off it and onto his father's outstretched arm just as the squid thing launches itself across the corridor, and his father pivots in one smooth motion and blasts it into a puddle of violet goo. "Whoa," breathes Erik. Shang-Chi's heart skips a beat as his father rises to his feet, the rings pulsing on his arm. His eyes are closed as if he is savoring the power Shang-Chi knows is flowing through him. It's never occurred to him to think of his father as old, but he must have aged in prison without Shang-Chi noticing, a frown line here and there, a faint streak of silver at his temple. The rings don't erase that, not exactly, but they line it with a kind of light that makes it look glorious. Barnes's finger tenses on the trigger. Everyone seems to be holding their breath, waiting for his father's next move. His father exhales and opens his eyes. Without looking in Shang-Chi's direction, he raises his fist. Shang-Chi almost flinches. Then he feels the rings flow back onto his arm. His father, barehanded, turns on his heel and strides off. They make it to the ship, which turns out to be an actual space shuttle, with just enough room to strap all of them in. "We're all set," shouts Barnes, dropping into the seat next to Shang-Chi and buckling himself in. "Punch it, Shuri!" "You got it, White Wolf!" announces the ship in Shuri's voice, and then they are disengaging with a violent twist from the alien ship and hurtling through the void of space, which is a lot less exhilarating and a lot more horrible than Shang-Chi was given to expect. "Now, can someone explain what is going on?" he demands, finding the urge to regurgitate whatever his last meal was. What is going on, apparently, is that he and Katie were snatched by the squid aliens using mind-controlled drugs and shanghaied off to a space where, unable to physically remove the rings from his arms, they attempted to dose him into relinquishing them, at which point the rings alerted his father and broadcast his location. "Like, find my iPhone?" "I have no idea what that means," says Barnes. "Yes," says his father dourly. "Exactly like that." "I didn't know the rings had an emergency contact protocol," says Shang-Chi. "Neither did I," says his father, "because nobody ever tried to steal them from me." Shang-Chi rolls his eyes. This had all unfolded during Mahjong night, during which his father had suddenly collapsed at the table. His father had at first doubted the veracity of the alert, given his track record of ethereal visions from family members. It was Erik who had got the information out of him and then managed to convince Okoye it was not an outlandishly elaborate escape attempt. Sergeant Barnes, who happened to be visiting friends in Wakanda at the time, volunteered to oversee the rescue effort and ensure neither of the inmates made a run for it. He was also, in his words, just about crazy enough to get into Shuri's untested prototype ship and blast off into space. "We're in an untested prototype," says Shang-Chi in horror. "Explains why the only people they were happy to back into it were former enemies of Wakanda," says Erik. "I mean, Zemo wanted to come too," says Barnes, "but we said no." "It is my best prototype," cries the disembodied voice of Shuri. "It should survive re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere, I think." "Oh, good," says Shang-Chi. "Can we maybe stop to think this through?" "Nope," says Shuri, brightly. "Re-entry in 3, 2... They do in fact survive re-entry and crash into a field just outside Wakanda." Shang-Chi lies dazed in his seat and reflects that it has been a day. Erik tugs off his helmet and whoops. "We made it!" He holds up his hand to Shang-Chi's father. "Mahjong team up top!" Shang-Chi's father gives him a dubious look. Then he raises his hand very slowly. It is the most awkward high five Shang-Chi has ever had the misfortune to witness. "I've been meaning to ask," says Barnes, flexing his metal hand to check if the joints are working. "How does his hair do that?" He jerks his chin at Shang-Chi's father, who is casually combing his hair back with a hand, somehow making it look artlessly windswept and like it's never been near a helmet in his life. Shang-Chi has often wondered if good hair is a side effect of the rings, but clearly it's just his dad. "The man came from prison, for crying out loud,"
and then space.
Don't ask, says Shang-Chi. Just don't! They climb out of the ship to find it ringed by Dora Milaje, spears angled towards them. Erik and Shang-Chi's father put their hands in the air, sinking carefully onto one knee, then the other. Shang-Chi watches, a terrible turn of emotions in his throat as they are cuffed by the Dora.
Hey, he says thickly. Thanks for coming to get me? Erik shrugs. Don't worry about it, man.
His father just nods once, briskly, and then Dora leads them both away.
Everybody eat, says Aunt Yingnan, presiding over a table groaning with more food than 4 humans could reasonably consume. There are actually 5 people at this family dinner, but since their father is only virtually present via WeChat on a tablet propped against the water jug, he's not going to be much help getting through this mountain of dishes. It is their second Qingming in Ta Lo. When visiting your relatives means navigating a deadly bamboo forest 364 days of the year, it makes sense to schedule reunion dinner around Tomb Sweeping Day. And Yingnan has thrilled to see them. You are too skinny, she says, heaping spoonfuls of fried eggplant on the resigned Jia Ling's plate. You must be working too hard.
This is amazing, says Katie, mouth full of mentau.
I don't have an excuse to prepare such a spread most of the year. I'm just happy you all are here. And you, of course, Wu Jie, she adds formally in the direction of the tablet. Daizi, I thank you for hosting the children, says their father, equally coolly. His face takes up most of the screen, although in the background they can glimpse his Spartan cell. It's all a bit awkward, but not the most painful family dinner they've endured by far. They manage to distract Aunt Yingnan, for the most part, with discussions about Wugong and anecdotes of American life, although in the grand tradition of all elder hosts, it's not long before she starts in on the ritually invasive questions. When are you and Riwen going to get married, Shang-Chi? Katie chokes on the lotus root soup. Shang-Chi says despairingly, For the 100th time, Yima, we're just friends. You should think about settling down. Not so young anymore. And Yingnan reaches for the teapot. You too, Jialing. Actually, I am seeing someone, says Jialing carefully.
Cool, says Katie. Anyone we know?
Maybe you do. Jialing sounds oddly defensive. We met earlier this year when I was in Madripoor on business. Her name is Sharon. She's nice. There is a loud clang as Aunt Yingnan drops the teapot lid. Sharon, says Shang-Chi flatly. As in Sharon Carter. Yes, says Jialing, chin raised. Why? Nothing. Great. Really happy for you. Aunt Yingnan clears her throat. Whoever you choose to be with, the most important thing is that they are a good person with a good heart. Isn't that right, Wu Jie? My own children put me in prison, says their father calmly. I do not see why they would want my opinion on anything. There is an awkward silence around the table, punctuated only by Katie biting into an excessively crispy spring roll and clearly regretting it instantly. But if you were to ask me, their father goes on, I think she is only after your business empire. Xialing slams her chopsticks down. Timothy! You know I'm right, says their father officiously. You, Xialing, I will not have that sort of language at my table, says their aunt reprovingly. Shang-Chi, put away your phone. It's work, Yima, says Shang-Chi, who has in fact been texting the Avengers group chat with, hey, so my sister is dating the power broker, should we be worried? So far, nobody has responded except Ant-Man, who simply forwarded a gif of someone's head exploding. Sorry, Yima, says Jialing, moodily picking up her chopsticks and stabbing at the pomfrets. These are incredible, says Katie in a desperate attempt to redirect the conversation. She holds up one of the omelet dumplings stuffed with stewed mushrooms. I don't know what's in them, but they're like out of this world. It was their mother's favorite, say their father and aunt at the same time. Shang-Chi and Jialing stop, chopsticks halfway to their mouth.
Our mother made it for us when we were little, says their aunt quietly. Both of us got the recipe, but my sister couldn't cook to save her life.
It was all she wanted to eat when she was pregnant with you both,
Says their father.
She had such cravings. I scoured the whole province for something like that, but none of it tasted quite the same. I think maybe she...
And here he pauses, then says,
Excuse me.
gets up and walks off screen. There was a small sound next to Shang-Chi. Jia Ling's lithe frame is shaking. She's crying into her bowl of rice, he realizes. He takes her gently by the shoulders. Hey, Li Ling. Sometimes I'm so jealous that he hurt her, she whispers, even if it wasn't real. I don't remember what her voice sounds like anymore. Shang-Chi folds her into his arms and rests his chin on the top of her head, the way he used to do when she was just a scrap of a thing with a shock of downy hair. He feels the tremors running through her body. After a while, she disentangles herself and wipes her eyes with the back of her hand. Their father has reappeared on screen. He seems on the surface to be as composed as ever, but when he looks up at the camera, there's the weight of all his years in his gaze. Uncle, says Katie. They were all startled to hear her address their father directly, which she has never done before of her own accord. Even she seems stunned by her own daring. How did you meet their mother? I know Shang-Chi and Jia Ling must have heard this story a billion times already, but I haven't. Their father blinks. So slowly, it seems for a moment he has put the world on pause. He takes a deep breath.
You see, Rui Wen, there comes a time in a man's life when he is closing in on 1,000 years and he has all the power in the world and he thinks he has everything he wants and he doesn't know why it feels like he has nothing. In such a place was I. Then I heard of this place, Dalo.
Shang-Chi picks up one of the omelette mushroom dumplings and bites into it. The flavor of it floods his mouth with salt, like the taste of tears. End of If You Liked It, Then You Should Have Put 10 Rings on It, by La Color Lot. If you enjoyed this recording, please feel free to leave a comment below or a review of the original story from the link in the descriptions. Also, please excuse any of the Japanese phrases and words that I have butchered. Thank you for listening.